Okay, so this is my Eclipse screen, guys. Okay, so first of all, let's create a new project, I would say. Or let's say we have a project, okay. So let's start working on this project. The first thing is we'll create a new class, okay. Let's try to create a new class. Okay, so guys, for Java, okay, if you want to practice Java, first thing you need is your Eclipse, okay. And for Eclipse, you can navigate to Google Chrome, okay, and then from Google Chrome, you can simply write Eclipse download, okay, and you can get it downloaded for the Mac or for Windows, okay. And the other thing is, you need to have JDK. So JDK, again, you can download 1.8. That's the most stable version, okay. So I hope everyone might be having Java JDK and Eclipse in their screen, okay. So now I'll just show you that. So basically, for Selenium purpose, right? If you focus on the Selenium purpose, there are few Java concepts, okay, which we need, okay, to learn before we start with actually Selenium. Now, for example, you can say first thing is your very basic, which is your introduction to Java, okay, and then we have data types, okay, and then the second thing is we have data types, okay. So we need to be aware of what are the data types which are available in Java, okay, and then the base of the Java on which the Java is based on, that is classes and objects, okay, classes and objects. And when we see data type, we should also focus on data type conversion. Okay, how do we convert data type from one data type to another data type? Okay, and then you can see constructors. Okay, so we have constructor, and after that we have a lot of things. For example, I'll just quickly name few of the things like inheritance concept we need to use, because even when we are developing Selenium framework, okay, we need to understand the inheritance from framework concept which we have in Java, okay, and then you can have polymorphism, okay, you have polymorphism, okay, and then we have your abstraction. These are all the features of OOP, right? Polymorphism, abstraction, okay, guys. I'll tell you one by one, don't worry. Okay, and then you can have some looping concept. Okay, you need to have some looping concept. Okay, and then yeah, one more thing is you need to learn arrays and collection framework. Okay, collection framework consists of, it will consist your array list, okay, your hash map, your linked list, all those concepts come under collection framework. Okay, and one more thing which you can learn specifically for Selenium is file handling. Okay, right? So let's see for introduction to Java. So as we know, Java is an object-oriented programming language. Okay, it's an object-oriented programming languages. Okay, so similar language to Java, which follows object-oriented is, for example, Python. Okay, we have Python, we have C#, and a couple of other languages as well. They are also object-oriented programming language. Okay, so Java follows the concept of object-oriented, and that is why we say all the concepts or everything in Java is termed as an object. Okay, everything in Java is termed as an object. Okay, now first we will see how do you create a class. So this is your class. Like I showed you how do you create a class. You can simply right click on your package, okay, and you can say new class. Okay, you can go over here and you can say new class, and you can create a class. So we have public class and the class name. Okay, class and the class name. Okay. Apart from this, we now if you want to store variables in Java, okay, variables I would say if you want to store data. Okay, so for example, there are a lot of people in this meeting. So let's say you want to show your name. Okay, So if your name is Ajay, okay, let's say if your name is Ajay, then how do you store that particular name? You will have to store it in a variable. Okay. So first thing is you will define a variable, okay, and then you can assign some value to that variable. Okay. So first thing is I'll write a main method. What is main method in Java? Okay. This is the main method in Java, and this is the entry point of execution. Okay. So Java will start execution from this particular main method. Okay. So let's say if you want to store, I want to store my ID. Okay. Let's say my ID is 47. Okay. Then how do I store that? Okay. First thing is I'll declare a variable. Okay. So, and this variable is of type integer. Okay. For example, ID will be, let's say my ID is 45. So it's an integer value. Okay. And if you want to store an integer value, you can define a reference variable of type integer, int. This is a data type. Okay. Now let us see what are the data types which are available in Java before we actually move on to the actual this thing. Okay. Let's first see how many types of data type we have in Java. Okay. So data types in Java are actually divided in primitive, okay, primitive and non-primitive. Okay. And then within primitive, what do we have? So there are multiple classifications as well within this, but let's focus on within primitive. What do we have? So we have Boolean, we have character, we have integer, okay, and then we have byte, and then we have short, and then we have long, and then we have float. Okay, we have float. And within non-primitive, what do we have? In non-primitive, what do we have? For example, string, arrays, and all these things comes under non-primitive. Okay. Now let's just imagine if you want to store. So Boolean is to store only true and false, one bit. Okay. You can have either 1 or 0, true or false. Character. If you want to say save your alphabets, okay, for example, A to Z, something like that, you can use character. If you want to store an integer value, okay, if you want to store an integer value, let's say 45 is an integer, right? If you want to store integer, so you can simply store it in your integer. Okay. In the similar fashion, now let's say your integer value is too big, right? It's a very long number. Okay. Then we have a long. Okay. We have long. And for other thing, let's say you have something in point. Okay. For decimal places and all, which integer and long do not support. For that purpose, we have float. Okay. And then if you want to store your entire name, let's say Ajay. Okay. Ajay is not a character, right? It's a string because it contains a sequence of character. You can store in string. And if you want to store multiple values, okay, if you want to store multiple values into single variable, okay, multiple values into single variable, then you can have arrays. Okay. So now let's just try to save my ID. So I can simply define integer ID. This in this step I'm defining my variable. I am just defining my variable. Now I want to assign my ID, that is 45, to this variable. So I can say ID is equal to 45. Okay, ID is equal to 45. And then I can simply print. So instead of printing 45, I will be printing my ID. Okay, now when I try to run this, it is printing 45. Let me move this down so that you can see. Okay, now when I run this, it is printing 45. Okay, now instead of using these two steps, we can also define it like this. Integer ID is equal to, let's say, 46. And I will not use this step. I can simply define in one line integer ID is equal to 46. Say 46. Okay, so this way we can define an integer value. Now let's say you want to define one Boolean. Okay, so I'll say Boolean and let the variable be present. So this is like if a particular person is present in your class or no, let's say. Okay, so I'll say yes, it is present. Let's say, okay, sorry, it's a boolean. Simply say true. Okay, now I'll simply say present, and it will simply print true. Okay, now boolean can hold only this. If I try to store something like this, say it's trying to give me an error. Cannot be resolved to a variable, or if you try to store like this, see again it's giving me an error. That change type of present to string, because boolean cannot store such types of values. Okay, boolean can store either true or either false. Okay, sorry, false. If I can write false over here, okay, then it will give you false. Okay, now let's just see if you want to store character. Okay, if you want to store character, then how do you store character? For a single character, we have the data type as character. Okay, so I can say character, and let me use the variable C for simplicity. And I can define it over here. Let's say my character is A. Okay, let's say my character is A. Okay, so I can say character C is equal to A, and then I can print my C. So C is the variable, right? C is the variable, and this particular variable contains the value A. So the value will be getting printed on the screen. Okay, guys. Okay, so now let's see. We'll see one of the major ones over here. So let's see. Let's try to use string now. Okay, we have seen a couple of primitives. Let's try to see string. Let's say I want to store a name. Okay, let's say I want to store a name. So whenever you are defining string, it has to be in double quotes like this. Okay, and end of the statement. So what is this? Name is your variable. Okay, name is your variable, and this particular name is containing the value Ajay. Okay, this particular name is containing the value as Ajay. Okay, so now when I try to print this, okay, print name, sorry, it's a variable. So when you are printing a variable, you can use directly without any quotes. Okay, Ajay. Now let's see one more thing. This particular name is containing Ajay, but after this, if I assign something to name again, okay, and now when I try to print, it's printing Ajay underscore new, because initially the value of name was Ajay, and after that I updated my name variable to Ajay underscore new, and now I'm printing name. Okay, so now it will print the new values. Okay, so we saw a couple of this thing now. Okay, so these are basically those data types which we will be using in our projects. Okay, so when you start working on any of the project, you can use these data types. Also, we can see one float example. So I'll say float f is equal to, now let's say we want to support decimal points. Okay, so let's say 23.5. And when you are writing float, okay, whenever you are trying to write a float, you have to mention in the end of the value, you have to mention f. Okay, f specifies that it's a floating value. Okay, and you can simply print float. Sorry, you can simply print f. Okay, if in case you want this value, okay, 23.5, and instead of using float, by mistakenly you used integer to store this value. Okay, by mistakenly if you're trying to store integer, then the system is giving you a compile time error. Can you see? It is simply saying you this is a type mismatch. You cannot convert from double or maybe float to integer. Okay, so decimal value integer cannot support. Okay, guys, decimal values integer cannot support. So if you want to support, for example, with the decimal values, then you have to use your floating variable. Okay. So, and for example, byte data type. Okay. So for example, byte data type. So byte data type has a very limited value. Now let's say if you want to have the range of byte data type is I believe from -128 to +127. Okay. So if you want to say you want to have limit your variables. Okay. Let's say you have a counter or something like that. Okay. And you want to limit your counter to increment only till let's say 125 or somewhere near less than 120. Okay. Then in that particular type you can use byte data type. Okay. Then that because byte will save your memory. Okay. If you are fixed that I want to use a very small amount, okay, of values, okay, my value will not increase. Let's say if I know that I'll be storing only numbers from 1 to let's say 100 as an integer, then you can use byte, okay, instead of using integer, because it will save your memories. Okay. So what happens is, each and every data type will have a range. Okay. And based on the value which you want to store, you can go for the range and then you can select the particular data type. For example, you can go for byte, or if you want to go for short, you can go for short. Long is used for example, integer also has some limits, right? Integer has some limits. So if you want to store value without that, more than that particular limit, okay, more than that particular limit, then you have to go for long. Okay. Now the values, even I don't remember. For integer data type is something like 2 raised to 31, something like that. Okay. 2 plus 2 raised to 31, something like that. It's the range. Okay. So if you want to store values beyond that range, okay, then you have to go for long. Okay, guys. Now there's one more thing. This is your simple data type. But now there are multiple instances, wherein you actually want to, convert your data types. Okay, wherein you actually want to convert your data type. Let's say someone is giving you data in, let's say integer. Okay, someone is giving you a data in integer. Okay, but you are expecting data in string. Okay, so when I say you are expecting means your method. Okay, your method, or maybe your project, maybe your class. Okay, so but in short it should be your method. Okay, my method is expecting data in string. So I am saying you give me data in string, but you are giving me data in integer. Okay, and now both the parties are not able to agree on that, what should I do? I want in string and you are giving me in integer. Okay, then there is a mechanism called as data conversion. Okay, wherein you can actually convert your data. Okay, wherein you can actually convert your data. Now let's say example, I want my method is using let's say integer. Okay, my method is using integer, and all my processing, okay, all my complex processing I am doing in integer. Okay, but the calling method, which method I have called, it is returning a string. Okay, and if I use that string directly into my method, okay, then all my complex logic will break. Okay, because I am actually expecting input as an integer. So what I will do is, I'll first convert that string to an integer, and then I'll start the processing. Okay? Then I'll start the processing. So this is just a background. Then there are circumstances, there are scenarios wherein you want to convert one data type to another. Okay. So now we will simply see few of the conversions which are you can say required. Maybe you should be aware of at least how do you convert. Okay. So let's say if you want to convert from string to integer. From string to integer. So first thing is I'll write here string to integer. I want to convert from string to integer. So I'll define string. Okay, I'll define string s1. Let's say is equals to 200 or maybe 300. Okay. Also try to make sure that whenever you are trying to convert, the value should not be lost. Okay. So let's say string s1, the value is 300. Okay. And now I want to convert this value into integer. My method is expecting integer, and someone is giving me a value as an integer. Okay, 300 is an integer. It is trying to give me value as an integer, but since it is in double quotes and stored into string, it is considered to be as a string. Okay, but I want to convert this. So I'll define one integer. Okay, I'll define one integer. Let's say a1. Simple. I'll define one integer a1. Okay, and to convert a particular value, I'll say integer. I'll use the integer class, and I'll say integer dot parse integer. And if you see this method, it is expecting a string. Okay, and here I can pass s1. Okay, so for this particular method, it says integer pass int is the method. It is expecting a string value. Okay, you pass your string value over here, and it will return you the integer value. It is going to return you integer value. So I'll simply store that integer value in my a1. Okay, and now I'll just simply print. Okay, let me print my a1 over here as well. Let's see what is my value printing. Okay, now let's say one local. Okay, it may not have been initialized, so you should always initialize. So if I say a1 is equal to 0, let's say this is your instance variable, so you have to define, let's say a1 is equal to 0. Now let's try to run this. Can you see initially it's printing 0 because the value of a1 was 0, and then after data conversion, this is your data conversion, wherein we tried converting the string value to an integer value, and now when I'm printing, it's giving you 300. So this we have converted your string. Okay, we have converted your string to integer. Okay, now in a similar fashion, okay, in a similar fashion, let's say you have a value in integer. Okay, you have a value in integer. Now let's say I'll say integer to string. Okay, I'll say integer to string. So I have a value in integer. So what could be value? I'll say integer a2 is equals to, I'll define some value. Okay, what can be the value for integer? It can be, let's say it can be like 20. Okay, since it's an integer, the value can be in integer form. So let's say it is your value 20. Okay, now I want to show this particular value in my string, like this. I want to get that value like this. Okay, currently it is in integer form. Okay, so how do I do that? There are a method called as value of. So let's say I'll say string. Within string class, there is a method called as value of a particular integer I. So this will return you the string representation of that particular value. Okay, and it is returning you a string. Okay, so I have to store this in a string. So let's say I define string s2. First, I'll try to print my s2. Again, when you try to print that s2, it will give you an error, and this error is variable not initialized. Okay, and then I'll say over here s2 is equal to this, and then I'll again print my s2. Can you see? Initially it's printing null, okay, and then it's printing 20. 20 is the value of s2. Okay, 20 is the value of s2. Or this is one way of doing this. Okay, there is one more way. You can use simple integer dot toString, and integer dot toString you can pass your variable, that is a2. Okay, this will also print your string representation of that particular variable. See, so it can be done in multiple ways based on your choice and your comfort and your project. You can select your own way. Okay, so this was some of the example of string to integer and integer to string. So most of the time, guys, most of the time you will face this issue wherein you want to convert from string to integer and integer to string. Okay, now we will see one more conversion of, say, integer to I would say, okay, let me see what we can use. One second, I'm thinking which could be the most valuable information so that you can, okay, let's say from integer to long. Okay, let's try to say that I have one integer. Okay, let's say I have one integer a3 and I'll store some value, let's say 35. This is a simple integer value. Okay, now I want to convert this value into a long. So I'll define one long L1, okay, a long variable L1, and then I can say L1 is equal to A3. Okay, this is simply assignment operator. Okay, I'm assigning my value in A3 to L1. Okay, now when I print L1, it is simply printing 35, not 135. It will simply print you 35. Okay, so what I have done is, I have declared a variable of integer. Okay, and then I have declared a variable of long L1, and I have assigned the value of A3 into my long L1. Okay, right? Simple. Now, we have seen integer to long. Let's see the reversal. Okay, let's see the reversal. Now, let me say this is integer to long. Now, let's just say this is long integer. So what I'll do is first I have to define long L2, a variable, okay, and I'll specify some value. So let's say 5432 is the value. Let's say 5432 is the value. Now I'll define one more integer variable because I want to convert it into integer. The way we did for integer to long. So, okay, the way we did for integer to long, can we try the same method over here? Just assign the long value to integer. Let's see. So, A4 is equal to L2. Okay, now it is giving me an error. Okay, so in the reverse, when we tried L1 is equal to A3 means I am assigning integer value to my long variable, there was no error. But when I'm assigning long value to my integer variable, then it is giving me an error. Okay, and what is that error? It is saying type mismatch cannot convert from long to integer. Okay, so basically long has values which are greater than the integer, and integer will not able to store those particular values. Okay, integer will not be able to store those particular values. Okay, so in this particular instances, you have to use casting. You can simply say add cast. So this is like your confirmation that yes, I want to store this long into my integer using this casting. Okay. Now when I print A4, it's printing A4. Okay, guys. So this was like some of the examples of how do you use data types, and then how do you use string, integers, and also how do you convert one data type to another data types. Okay. Now let's just focus on the I would say classes and objects. Okay. So guys, as you know, even if you see in your real world, right? Yes, you can. We can convert. For each and every conversion is possible, right? So for homework, for practice purpose, what you can do is you can convert from the rest. For example, I have converted from integer to long. Okay, so you can convert from integer to float. Okay, from integer to string, from integer to character. Okay, so each and every conversion, and even it's vice versa, right? String to integer and integer to string. So these both ways it's possible. Okay, so have a look at both the ways of the data type conversion. So there are long list of data type conversion. Like we have 8 data types. So if you see, we can convert. So it would be around 20 types of different conversion, and we can try all of them. Okay, now when I say objects, guys, what exactly object is? At Java, if you see, is mostly focused on objects. Okay, as we say, it's an object-oriented programming language. Okay, so in terms of Java, now when we have an object, okay, so even if living world, if you compare in this real life, Okay, all particular person, for example, me, you, your laptop, your mobile phone, okay, anything which you use in your house or maybe you see, it's an object, right? It's simply an object. Okay, so similarly in Java, there is an object. So how do you define an object? So if anything is has some state, or some properties or some behavior, we'll term it as an object. Okay, for example, your bike. Okay, your bike can, you can drive your bike. Okay, your bike can start. Okay, your bike can stop, and there are engines running. So these are some of the properties. These are some of the behavior of that particular bike. Okay, so bike is an object. And now, what do we say? Class. Class, we can say it's a prototype. Okay, it's a prototype, or maybe it's a blueprint. Okay, and it consists of different objects. Class consists your objects. Okay, so we group that particular object into classes. So now we will see, first of all, how do you, okay, sorry. Okay, now let's try to have one more application, sorry, one more Java class. And I'll say this is my bank. Okay, this is my class, okay, and this is my bank. Okay, so now also let's simultaneously see how do you create a method. Okay, let's simultaneously see how do you create a method. So you can define public. Okay, the return type should be void. Public is your, like, this method is available to all. Void means I'm not returning anything, and then your bank method. So you can see credit. Credit is your bank method. Okay, and here I can say I'm in credit. Okay, now guys, can you see there is no main method over here, right? So if I run this program, it will not execute because execution starts from main method. Okay, execution starts from main method. Now if I want, guys, if I want to access this method from this particular class, okay, these are two different class. Okay, this is one class and this is another class, bank.java. This is another class. So these are two different classes. Okay, so can I access this method directly? Let's say I am trying to access that particular method. So I'll say credit. No, it's not giving me an option. Okay, so if you want to access methods, okay, if you want to access methods or maybe variables, okay, data or methods of a different class, first you have to create an object of that particular class. Okay, so what I'll do is, I'll simply write okay, I'll create an object of bank. Okay, how do you create an object now? So I'll say bank and I'll write the object of bank as a bank B1. Or I'll simply say bank1 is equal to new is the keyword which we use to create an object of bank. I want to create an object of bank. Okay, so you can simply say bank B1 is equal to new bank. Now, if I try to use bank1 dot, see it is giving you some method as credit. Okay, it's giving you a method as credit. Yes, Sridhar, you can declare everything in main method and execute, but that is not a good practice, okay? Because your main method, if you write every code in your main method, then when there won't be a concept of reusability, okay? We are defining reusability when you try to work on a framework level. For practice purpose, see, this is your practice, right? This is my practice code. So practice, I'm defining everything into my main, okay? But when I actually work on framework level, okay, I will not define everything into my main. My main method will be very short, okay? And what it will do is, it will call each and every method as and when required. Okay, as and when required. Okay, so your main method should be small, and for each of the job, right? For each of the job, you can have a method. Okay, and you can simply call that particular method, and that is why we do not write your entire code in main. So if you want to access credit, this credit method is of a different class. Okay, this belongs over here. Okay, and if you want to call that method, first we have to create an object. Okay, so what I did is, I created an object. And how do you create an object? You can simply specify bank. This is the name of the class. Bank1 is equals to new bank. Okay, now this is calling that method. Now when I try to run this, see, it is printing I'm in credit. So I have not moved from here to there. I'm doing nothing about this. Okay, I'm running my this code. Okay, but still it is printing a statement in this class because I have created an object and I'm calling that particular method. So it will go to credit method over here and then it will print this statement. Okay. So this is how you can create an object. Okay. So for example, classes, this is your class. Sorry. This is your class application demo. And over here, this is the class bank. And a class can contain data as well as methods. So these are all my data, right? Over here, when I declare, these are all my data. And if I declare like something like public static void or something like this is your method. Okay. So I had data and I had methods. Okay. So I would say that any entity, if you see of any entity in Java that has some state or behavior, okay, make a note of this, that has some state or behavior, this you can call it as an object. Okay. That is very similar to real world examples. Let's say book, your laptop, okay, these are all your object. Okay, it will have some state, okay, it will have some behavior. Okay, and apart from that, classes, as I said, it is a group of objects. Okay, it's a group. You can simply say it's a template, or maybe you can say it's a blueprint or something, but yeah, it's a group of objects. Okay, so now let's move towards the next concept, which I would say it's constructor. Now, what is constructor in Java? Okay, so the way we have your methods, right? The way we have main method, or the way we had this credit method, right? So in a similar fashion, there is a constructor, okay? And when you create an object of that particular class, okay? When we create an object of class, this particular constructor is called, okay? This particular constructor is called. By called, what do you mean by called? Means it will execute. I am calling this credit method, okay? I am calling this credit method means it will execute the credit method. Okay. So in a similar fashion, when I say constructor, let's just have first we will see how do you create a constructor. Okay. How do you create a constructor? Okay. So you can create your constructor simply by using the class name. Let's say I say public and my class name is bank. Okay, public bank, and you can define your code over here. Okay, you can define your code in this particular braces. That means this is my constructor. Okay, constructor is always having the same name of the class. Okay, constructor always has the same name as the class. Okay, and here you can write your own code. For example, what do you want to do when this particular constructor is called? Okay, let's say I want to print I am in bank class constructor. Okay, it is saying that I am in bank class constructor.
And when exactly this constructor will be called? This constructor will be called after this line. I have created the object of bank. Okay, guys, I have created the object of bank, and the object name is bank1. Okay, bank1 is referring to the bank object. Okay, and now I am not calling that particular constructor, guys. Okay, I am actually not calling that particular constructor. Okay, I am just calling the credit method. Okay, I'm just calling the credit method. Okay, but still when I run this program, first it is printing I am in bank class constructor. Okay, I am in bank class constructor, and then it's going towards your method. Okay, then it is going towards your methods. So constructor, it's a special type of method. Okay, and why do you need this? Okay, why do you need this? Because let's say if you want to initialize few of the variables. Okay, so when your variable should be initialized whenever there is an object created of this particular bank, your variables should be initialized. Let's say I have let's say I have defined one variable over here. Let's say integer id. Okay, integer id. Okay, and I'm printing over here in this particular method. Let's say plus id. Okay, I'm printing the id. Now let's say what exactly it is printing. It is printing 0. Okay, but let's say whenever there is an object created, the value of this id should be, let's say id is equal to 1. Okay, now let me try this. Okay, so let's assume if you are using any of the variables, okay, any variable you are using in your method, okay, or in your class, okay, and those particular variables have not initialized, I haven't initialized these variable, right? So you can initialize your variable in your constructor. Okay, so let's say when you are executing your test cases, okay, when you have some, when you are testing a project, you have some test cases, right? So for each of the test cases, before you execute, there are some prerequisites. Okay, there are some pre-steps. Okay, prerequisites we call them. Okay, we call them as prerequisite. Now, what exactly prerequisite is? Okay, so basically, while before you execute your actual steps, first you should check your prerequisite and you should execute your prerequisite in a similar fashion. Okay, when you are actually running your, when you're actually calling your method, okay, before you call your method, there are certain variables or there are certain base initialization which you have to do, and those can be done in your constructor. Okay, now for example, if you are working for Selenium, okay, if you are working for Selenium, okay, and if you want to, call your WebDriver method, okay, so somewhere or the other, yes, you can put integer id is equals to 10. That's fine. You can put integer id. This is just an initialization. You can initialize anything. Okay. So anything which you feel you want to initialize. Okay. Now let's just say why is we are using id over here, but we are initializing over here because this method will be called before this method. Okay. So whenever a constructor of this class is called, like for example, when you create an object, this particular constructor is called, and this is getting printed, id value is getting assigned. After that, bank credit method is getting called, and here we have the credit method. Okay, this is basically your constructor. Okay, this is basically your constructor. Okay, right, and each and every class each and every class will have a constructor, even though if you do not define, but there are some internal constructors. Okay, so if you do not define, there are some internal constructor which will run. Okay, and let's say if you want to have if you want to print something, okay, let's say I am printing, let's say the id over here is 2. Okay, but I do not want this, but this ID should be referenced from over here. So what it will do is, first the ID value is 2, then, okay, so what will it print over here? Will it print 2 or will it print 10? Yes, guys. Will it print 2 when I run this statement? Will it print 2 or will it print 10? Yes, anyone in the chat? Is it gonna print 2 or 10? Some people are saying 2. Okay, let me run this. It is printing 10. And why is it printing 10? Okay, let's see the execution. Okay, so first it will create the bank method. Okay, as soon as you have created the bank method, new bank one, okay, it will go over here. Okay, so at this particular point, the value of the ID is 2. Okay, the value of the ID is 2. Okay, and after that, when this constructor was called, we are updating the value to ID is equals to 10. Okay, we are updating the value to ID is equals to 10. So now ID will be storing 10. This is the value. Now when you run, okay, so ID is 10, this is done. Now it will come back over here. It's saying bank1 dot credit. So it will again go over here and it will run this particular statement. I am in credit plus ID. So ID, what is the value of ID? Value of ID is the 10. So yes, it will be same. Okay, so we are using integer, but this thing will remain same. And now the value is updated, right? Here the value of ID is not 2, but the value is 10. And that is why it is printing you 10. Okay, I'll use some space. Just printing you, see, now it's printing you 10. Okay, and after here, if you define something, let's say in this particular statement, if you write something, then it will print accordingly. Okay, so each and every time, how can you put two values, 2 and then? Okay, so basically, let me repeat this. People are having some confusion. Okay, let's delete this first. Okay, let's not focus on this. So the ID is 2 over here, right? ID is 2. So when this class is loaded, initially the value of ID is 2. Okay, now let me keep on writing it over here. Okay, so let's say we are dealing with the value of ID. So ID, initially the value of ID is 2. Okay, now when we are creating this object of the bank class, okay, when you create the object of a bank class, what is getting called? When you create an object of a bank class, what is getting called? Yes, in the chat, can anyone suggest? What is getting called when I create an object of bank class? Constructor. But constructor of which class? Constructor of my this class, application demo. So yeah, so you create an object of bank, so constructor of bank class will be called. Now this is clear, right? So I'll go to bank, okay, which is the constructor over here. This is the constructor, right? This is the constructor, okay? So it will go over here and it will do your print statement, okay? So now if you see, it is printing, okay? And after that, the value of the ID, initially which was 2, now it is becoming 10. It is updating the value. So now what's the new value of the ID? It is 10, okay? Let me write over here. Okay, and after this, when I print this, okay. So when I'm saying old value of the ID, what is the old value of the ID? It is 2. Okay. Then it will print this line. Okay. Then it will assign that 10 value to the ID. Okay. And then I'm saying again print the value of ID. Okay. Then again what it will be printing? This value. So this is now 10. Okay. And now over here, when I say I'm in credit and I say plus ID, it will again print 10 because that is the latest value. I am in bank class constructor. So first it is printing the old value of ID is 2. Then it's saying I'm in bank class constructor. The new value of the ID is 10. I'm in credit 10. Okay. It will not always pick the ID from the constructor, guys. Make a note. If I update this value over here, now what will be printed in this line? What will be printed? 2, 10, or 45? Perfect. Because now the value of 10 is changing to 45. Okay. So it will always pick the latest value. Okay. For processing, it will always pick the latest value. Now, okay, so we have understood the concept of constructor. Okay. Now let's say there is one more method, and I have this method public void sum. This is to add two numbers. Okay. So this is to add two numbers. So let's say I have one number, integer a is equal to 20, and then integer b is equal to 30. Okay, and I'll also try to initialize. I'll say a is equal to 40, and then b is equal to 50. Okay, then I want to add this particular number a and b. Okay, so I'll simply say a and b. So I want to add a, so I'll say integer c is equal to a plus b. Okay. Now I'll simply say, sorry, I'll simply solve my value of c. So basically I'm saying a is by 20 and b is my 30. Okay, and I am printing my value c, and I'll call this method from here. Okay, so now what will be printed as the value of c? Yes, guys, the value of c. So I'm printing this particular value c. So I'm taking the value from a. So a is 20 and b is 30, and now I want to print the addition of a and b. Okay, so what will be printed over here? Right, so simply a is 20 and b is 30. Okay, so it will print 50. Okay, guys, simple. A, the value of a is 20 and b is 30. So it will simply say a plus b, that means 20 plus 30, and the value will be saved in C, and we will be printing C. Okay, now let's see if it is printing 50 or not. Sometimes Java also does not work accurately. Okay, see, I told you, there are some issues in Java as well. Okay, Java is not calculating sometimes properly. So is this an issue in Java, or is it something an issue in our understanding, guys? Is Java not trying to work properly, or is Java not working properly? Or Java is not able to do simple calculation of a plus b? Yes, let me trying to run again. It says 90. I have given such a simple definition to Java that the value of my A is 20, value of my B is 30. Simply go and add and take that value into C and print the value of C. But this simple calculation is also so difficult for Java. Right. So people are again miss the concept of constructor. Okay. So when you create a new object, the constructor of this particular bank class is getting called. And now if you see, the value of A is getting reassigned to 40 and the value of B is getting reassigned to 50. Okay. And because of this reassignment, the value of A and B is getting updated. Okay? And what's the basic rule of Java? Not only of Java, but for any programming language, if you want to do something on a value, okay, it will always pick up the latest value. Okay, because the earlier value, but initially constructor, yeah, so constructor was called initially, right? Initially constructor was called. So when you run this program, okay, when you run this program, the constructor is getting called, okay, and constructor is assigning the value. After constructor, this particular method is getting called. Okay, so the pointer is going from here to here. So now the value of A is 40 and 50, and that is why it is printing 90. Okay, guys. It is not the reverse that initially constructor will call and then these values will be assigned. No. Okay, these values are already defined. Okay, after that your constructor is called. Okay, so these values get overwritten over in this. Confused why it printed 50 initially. When did it printed 50 first of all? I never saw it printing 50. Did anyone saw printing it 50 over here? It never printed 50. It is always printing 90. Okay, so the value getting reassigned, and now when you and okay, why mistake? Sorry. Yeah, no worries, it's fine. So now when you assign the new values, it will add based on the new values. Okay, and here also you can, if you want, you can update those values and you can print that. Okay, guys. So this was more or less of your constructors. Okay, so now we'll move towards inheritance. Okay, now what exactly inheritance is? When we have addition of no, so basically when we create a new object, okay, when you create a new object, constructor will get called. This is the basic method. Okay, this is the base. Now, depending on your scenario, you can have, if you want to have the value to be added over here, you can have some other ways. Okay, but if you create an object of this class, constructor will get called, and based on the new values, if the constructor is updating the new value, if I don't update, let's say, if I don't update my values over here, now it's printing 50. So if you want to use the values which were initially assigned, okay, if you want to use the values which were initially assigned, you don't want to update those values, okay, then you can simply use, do not define those in your constructor. But if you want to update those values in your constructor or initialize, then you can define those values in your constructor, okay, and then it can be called from any methods. Okay, okay, guys. Now let's move towards inheritance. Now, what exactly inheritance is? Hmm? So inheritance again, it's a concept of object-oriented programming. Okay, guys. So inheritance is not dedicatedly for Java. Okay, inheritance is an open concept for object-oriented programming, and it can apply to many languages which are following the features of object-oriented. Okay, so this is something which is not limited to Java. Okay. So we can have inheritance in R, we can have inheritance in Python, we can have inheritance in C Sharp. So any method which are using object-oriented programming principles, they can have and they can implement inheritance in those particular languages. Okay, and in this particular inheritance, okay, in this particular mechanism, I would say, what happens is, an object can acquire the property of a parent object. Okay, an object can acquire the property and behavior of a parent object. Like we as a human being, okay, we as a child, we acquire the property of our parents, right? Okay, so we acquire some of the properties from our parents. Like you have some of the properties from your mom and some of the properties from your dad, right? So these are like you are acquiring the properties from your parents. Okay, and you can also have some properties from your grandfather as well, right? So you can have properties from your parents as well as parents of your parents. Okay, so this would be a multi-level hierarchy. Okay. So let's say if your parent has some property, let's say this is just an imagination. Let's say your parent have a property of long height. Okay, they have long height. Okay, then in that case also, you can also have long height. Okay, you can also have long height because you are acquiring the property of your parents. Okay. Okay, guys, it's an important part of object-oriented programming. Okay, so make sure that this is a definitely an interview question. Okay, and now why do you do inheritance? First of all, without inheritance, also we can achieve your programming. Okay, we can write all your code without inheritance as well. So why do you do inheritance? Yes, anyone? Why do you create inheritance? So basically, you can create inheritance when you want to create a new class, okay? But those should be built on, say, existing classes. Let's say, okay, if you already have a class, okay, and that particular class has some methods and properties, right? And now if you want to create a new class, okay, and the new class should have some similar properties, okay, of the existing class, then you can use the concept of inheritance. Okay? And what will happen if you use the concept of inheritance? Let's say your parent class has something, okay? Your parent class has some methods. Let's say uh, your parent class has a run method, okay? Then if you want a new class and that particular class should also contain run method, okay? That particular class should also contain run method. Okay? Then you can simply use the concept of inheritance. Okay. Now, along with this, it is also used for code reusability. Okay. So when I say code reusability means you have to write code at only one place. Okay. You will be writing your code at one place and then you can use that code multiple times from different places. Okay. So I'll give you some example of code reusability over here. Let's say I want to add two numbers. Okay. I want to add two numbers. Okay. So what I can do is, I can over here. Okay. Let's say I'll write integer. Okay. I'll write integer, and I'll write num1. Num1 is my variable. It's 10. Okay. And then integer num2 is equal to 30. And then if I want to add this, okay, so I'll say sum is equal to num1 plus num2, okay, and this should be also integer. And then I'll say so sum. I'm simply adding two variables, okay. So I'm adding 10 and I'm adding 30. So it's printing me 40, okay. Now let's just imagine I want to add this number again and again. Okay, now I want to add this number again and again. So instead of doing all this over here, what I can do is, I can create a method. Okay, I can create a method. Let's say sum method. Okay, and this particular method will add. So I can define integer num1. This is your parameter. Okay, I can define in a method. I can define parameters. So this particular method is expecting parameters, two parameters of type integer. Okay, then instead of doing all this, okay, so I'll define the num1 actually, right? Okay, and after that, I'll simply call this method sum, and I'll write num1 and num2. And here, what I can do is, I can say result, okay, or I can simply say num1 plus num2. Now, when I run this, okay, again it's printing me 40. But now, for any code or from any line of code, okay, from anywhere, if someone wants to add this number, two numbers, then he will not have to write like this, these two lines, okay. What he has to do is, he has to simply call this line. He has to simply call this line, call this method, and it will be printed. Now this is only two lines, so you might be wondering that we can do it over here itself. Okay. Now let's just imagine there is one code, okay, like this, which takes let's say 10 lines of code. Okay, let's say you want to read a file. To read a file, it will take 10 lines of code. Okay, so if you want to read a file over here, you will read the file, you will write 10 lines of code, then you will do some action. Then again, if you want to read a line, again you will write 10 line of code, and then you will do some action, right? So if you have to perform this 10 times, okay, you will write 100 lines of code, okay, and all of the code will be same to read the file. So instead of doing this, you can create a new method, okay, and you can read the file over here. So those 10 lines of code will be over here, okay, and you can just keep on calling this method. So instead of 100 lines, you will be only having 10 lines of code, okay. So now just say we have this bank class, okay. Now let's try to create one more class. So that is your bank. So let's say this is your ICICI bank, okay. This is your bank and this is ICICI bank. So by the name itself, you can understand that this bank should be your parent, okay, because bank will contain what? Bank can contain a lot many things, right? So bank can contain a lot many things. For example, bank can have ICICI ICICI bank, and then we have SBI, then we can have HDFC. These are all your child of bank, okay. These are all your child of bank, okay. Now let's just say this, if I want to specify, okay, this is a child of bank, but I haven't specified somewhere, right? I haven't mentioned it somewhere that this, okay, like this is a child of bank class, okay. But I'll have to show Java, okay. I'll have to inform Java, okay, that this is a child class of bank. And how do you do that? Okay, you have to inform Java. So there is a keyword called as extends. There is a keyword called as extends. Okay, and what is the meaning of extend? It says that this particular class is extending one of the class. Okay, it's extending one of the class. And which class do I want to extend? Bank class. Okay, I want to extend bank class. So at this particular statement, Java will understand that bank is my parent class and this is my child class. I am extending bank class over here. Okay, I am extending my bank class over here. Now let's just say, okay, so here, what are the methods which are present in bank class? So we have credit method. Now can you simply access credit method? Can you simply access credit method? See super dot credit. Now let me see. Okay, I do not need this line actually. Let's delete this. Let me just try to run this. To run this, I'll need one main method. Okay. Let's do one thing. Let's try to run this from our application class. So you'll have a revision of them. Okay. If I want to run that particular this method, okay, credit method, this method from my this class, how can I do that? First thing about we have to do, if I want to run a method from another class, okay, what should I do? Yes, guys, what should I do? First thing is create object, right? So ICICI Bank is the name of the class. Okay, I'll say I'll create an object. Okay, so this is my bank two is equals to new ICICI Bank. Okay, this way I'm creating an object. Okay, this way I am created an object. So guys, whenever you say, okay, whenever you say that I want to access the method, first thing is you have to create an object. Then using bank2 dot, okay, now can you see there are no methods over here. Okay, there are no methods over here, but when I say bank dot, sorry, this was bank one, right? Bank one, okay, got it. One second. When I say, okay, let me try this first from here. Can I run this credit method public? Let's say static. And let's have one variable in the bank method. Okay, let's have one variable and the name. Let's say you have some salary. Let's say you have a salary is equal to 1000 something. Okay, you have your salary as 1000. Okay, now when I try, okay, when in this particular class I want to print, let's say salary. So first thing what I can do is, I'll create an object. Okay, let me create an object of this particular class. Let's say ICICI Bank. Can I create an object of this class over here? Yes. So I can write obj is equal to new ICICI Bank. Okay, this is creating an object of ICICI Bank. Okay, now what I can do is, I can just use first of all CISO, that is system.out.println. Okay, I want to print system.out.println, and I can say obj dot. Now guys, can you see one thing? It is showing me A, B, ID and salary. Okay, it is showing me A, B, ID and salary. But are these fields present in my ICICI Bank class, guys? In ICICI Bank, I do not have any such field as A, B, ID or salary. Okay, if I click on this, can you see this, guys? A, B, ID and salary. It's showing me these options A, B, ID and salary, but these values, okay, these variables I do not have in my ICICI Bank, but still it is showing me. And why is it showing me? Now let's just delete this method. I don't want this. It's unnecessary complication. Let's just delete this word. Okay, now when I say obj dot, now can you see this, guys? Is it showing me anything? I mean, any of the variables, A, B, ID or something? No, right? Because this particular class, it's not a child class of any class. Okay, we haven't specified that this is a child class of any class. That is why it has to deal with its own variables and own methods. Okay, so but when I say extends bank, okay, when I say extends bank, and now when I say object dot, it is giving you all the variables, okay, all the variables and methods which are present in my bank class. So I can say salary. I can say salary, and when I run this, it's printing you 1000. When I run this, okay, it's printing you 1000. So this particular salary field, guys, if you see, this particular salary field is not present in my child class. Okay, so can you see the concept of reusability? Okay, I haven't defined the salary field over here. Okay, it's defined in my parent class, but still I'm able to use it. Okay. Now, using obj dot credit, there is a credit method over there, right? This particular method is over here. Okay, and one more thing, guys, I have not created the object of bank class. Okay, if you want to use the method of the bank class, okay, you have to create an object of the bank class, but I am creating an object of ICC bank. Okay, can you see this, guys? I have created an object of ICICI bank, but still I'm able to access the methods of bank class because ICICI bank is actually extending your bank class. Now when I run this, see, it's displaying I am in credit 45. That is, this method is been getting called. Okay, this is the concept of reusability, guys. So if you have any method which is defined in your parent class, let's say, if you have any what's a method which is defined in your parent class, okay, and if you want to call or if you want to directly use that particular method from your child class, okay, then instead of rewriting the entire code, okay, instead of rewriting the entire code, okay, we can simply create an object of the child class, and using object, no, if you create bank object, then you cannot call ICC class. No. So that, okay. So you can get your parent properties, right? Static method, yes, we'll see that in the later class. How do you deal with static and non-static methods? Okay. But in terms of Sridhar, for your question, right? So if you create an object of parent class, how can you get the property of child class? So basically, you acquire the property from your parents, right? You acquire the properties and behavior from your parents. Okay, so the child class will know what are the particular methods available in the parent class. Okay, but the parent class will not be able to show what are the methods. For example, let's say there is one method over here. This is your child class, right? So I'll say public. Now I'll define one method. Let's say public method, and I'll say this is your debit method. Let's say, okay, this is your debit method, and simply printing. Okay, I'm in debit method in ICICI child class. Okay, now when I go over here, I have created this object of bank. Okay, now can I see this? Let me try. Okay, so here can you see the debit method? You cannot see the method debit. Okay, because debit method specifically belongs to the child class. Now when I try to run this from over here, let's say obj dot debit. See here I can see this method. Okay, here I can see this particular method. So make sure if I just simply write this over here for your reference. Okay, so I'll say bank one dot debit. Okay, I'll simply write this won't work as debit is a child class method. Okay, debit is a child class method. And sorry, it should be not bank 2, it should be actually bank 1. Okay, because we have the parent class variable is bank 1. Okay? So, but you can now, guys, let's just imagine if I want a class to use my this debit as well. So which class can use my debit method? I mean, I can use, we have seen I can use. Which other class can use my debit method? Yes, guys. Which class? Bank class? No, bank class cannot use debit method, right? We just saw, right? Your bank class, we just saw over here. So when I say we are creating an object of new bank, within bank, I cannot use this method. Yes, that is one correct answer. ICICI can use. Yes, ICICI can use. That's right. Apart from that, let's assume, I'm not going to create, but let's assume if I create a new class, okay, and that particular new class is extending my ICICI bank, then can I create this debit method? Can I use this debit method? Right? So in a similar fashion, yes, all the child class. So it is like bank had a class, sorry, bank had a method as credit. Okay. So all the child class of this bank method were able to use credit. Okay. Now there is a method debit and this particular class. Okay. So all the child class, if you create, they will be able to access this debit method. Okay. This debit method. Okay. Okay, guys, this was more of inheritance. I'll stream. Can you inherit more than one class? No. So this is one of the feature in Java, a feature or drawback or whatever you can call. You cannot inherit from, you cannot extend from multiple class. Okay, you cannot inherit from multiple classes. Okay, so that is a multiple inheritance is not possible. Okay, well, can we create ICICI object and bank and call ICICI? Yeah, if you create it, guys, if you create an object, then you can call anyways, right? If you create an object of a class, then you can call the methods. But this, what I'm trying to show you, I haven't created an object of bank class. Okay, try to guess the difference. When you create an object of a class, you can call the methods. Okay, even if you're a child or if you're not a child, then also you can call, right? Because application demo is not a child of any of this class, but when I create an object I can call, right? But here what I'm trying to say is I have created an object of my own class, ICC bank. Okay, I haven't created an object of bank class, but still I can call, and that is because of inheritance. Okay, okay, so package. Okay, so basically, group package is also used in terms of access. Okay, so for when we use access modifiers, there are some of the access modifiers, for example, default access modifiers or protected access modifier, which are limited to package. Okay, which are limited to packages. Okay, so when I say package, so there are some of the fields. If I want to have some of the methods or data types or variables which should be available within this package. So I will define the access modifier accordingly, and it will be visible only to this package. Okay, so you can group your classes. Okay, let's say if you have multiple, if you're working on a project and if that particular project has multiple modules, okay, then what you can do is, you can create packages for each module. Okay, and within packages you can have your own classes. Okay, now we will see one last and very simple concept, okay? Because it's on a similar line with the data types, I would show you how exactly arrays work, okay? So when I say array, so let's say, how do you define an array in Java? You can simply say, when I say integer number, okay, this is a variable of type, variable number of data type integer, and it will store only one value. But if I want to store multiple values, we can simply define opening and closing square brackets. This is an array now. Okay? This particular number is an array. And within array, if I would have, it would have been like this. For example, let's say 1. Okay, fine. This is fine. No error. But let's say if I want to store something, okay, something like this, let's say 1, 2. Now it is giving me an error. Can you see what the error is? Cannot convert from integer to int. Okay, because this can store only one value. So when I say array, now it can store multiple values. Okay, this particular array, now it can store multiple values. Okay, guys. So now if I want to get the length, okay, so simply number dot length is the method. Length is a property, okay, and this is returning me the length of that particular array. So I can say integer length is equal to something, and then I can print. Okay, now when I print this, it's showing you 2. Okay, it is showing me 2. Okay, right? Because 1 and 2, I have 2 elements, and it is not necessary to be in a specific order. I can have in any order. Okay, now when I print this, it is showing me 5. Okay, but array is of fixed size. Can you see this is of fixed size? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm defining the size. Now, let's just say if you want to print the array. Okay, let's just simply try to print like this. Can okay, if I print this, can you see this, guys? Okay, this is so when you have multiple values. Okay, how do you print multiple values? If you want to print multiple values in and which are present in an array or any item which can store multiple values, how do you print that? You can simply use any of the loop, or you can use index. Now, if I print let's say if I print number of 0, now can I print this? See, it's printing 1. Okay, so I'm hard coding the index over here, and let's say if I print 4, now it is printing 13. Okay, so based on the index, so this is at the 0th position, this is at the first position, this is at the second, third, and this is at the 4th position. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But indexing starts from 0. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the position. So when I say number and then bracket, you can define your value. That which value do you want to print? Okay, guys. Now you can print it. Okay, so if you want to print, let's say all the values, you can simply use for loop. Okay, so I'll say for I is equal to 0, I want to start from 0, and this is my list, right? Number dot length, and here I want to print the value. So I'll say number of I. Okay, and simply write over here printing using for loop. And simply write printing using for loop. And now when I run this, you see this 1, 2, 10, 34, and 13. Okay. Okay, guys. So I think we have covered a lot of concepts today based on the topic. Yeah, there are few topics left which we'll see later. Okay, but I have tried to cover most of the topics. For example, we saw what classes is, what an object is, right? What are the data types in Java? Okay, different data types which are present in Java. Okay, and then how do you store values in a variable? How do you define a variable? Okay, and then how do you access? How do you use data conversion? Right? How do you convert from one data type to another data, for example, integer to string, and then from string to integer. Okay, and then we saw what exactly classes is and what exactly constructor is, right? If you go over here, what is the constructor, right? So whenever you create an object of a particular class, okay, when you create an object of a particular class, the constructor gets called, okay? So based on the constructor, whatever you have defined, it will initialize your variables or whatever properties you have defined, whatever code, it will run the constructor, okay? And then we also saw how do you access your method of a different class, okay? So to access the method of different class, you can simply create an object, okay? You create an object of that particular class of which you want to access the method, create the object and call that particular method. Then we saw what exactly a child class is, what are the levels of inheritance and how do you achieve inheritance in Java. Okay, so to achieve inheritance, we can simply use the keyword extend. Okay, extend is a keyword and this is your parent class. Okay, I'm extending this parent class and using this parent class, even if I do not create the object of a parent class, and just by simply object of the child class, you can use the parent class variables and methods. Okay, and use the parent class variables and methods. And then in the last, we saw what exactly an array is. Okay, if you want to store more than one, more than one values, okay, in a particular variable, okay, you can define it as an array of integer. Okay, if you define it simply as an integer like this, it will be able to store only one value. Okay, but if you define it as an array of integer, it will be able to store multiple values. Okay, and then to you can get the length of that particular array. If you want to print any specific index, you can use your indexing over here. Or if you want to print all the values, you can simply use the for loops and you can use for loop to print all the values. Okay, guys. So I think we are cool. You guys can practice Java basics today, and then let me know if you have any queries or concerns. Okay, I hope the session was helpful for many of the people. I can understand there are mixed people over here. So some of the people might be already aware of the concept which I have explained. That might be a possibility. For some of the people who have just started Java, they might have found this as a very useful topic. And for few of the people who are very new to Java, maybe they might have found it a bit, a bit pace. I would say the pace would have been an issue. But yeah, I have tried to go slow and try to cover most of the basic topics so that you guys can access it. Okay, and then what you can do is you can practice something, and if there are any questions or queries, you can jot it down, and we can try to cover them in the next topic. Okay, yeah, this is in line with the Selenium. No, this is in line with the Selenium. Okay, so from developers' point of view, if you go, there are a lot of, for example, we have Spring, we have Hibernate, we have Java. So there are a lot of advanced concepts as well, right, for Java. So for developers' point of view, it's not there. This I'm trying to. So the basic is for developers as well as for the people who want to move to Selenium automation, right? So the basic looks the same, okay, but yeah, there are some advanced topics in Java, okay, for example, Java Hibernate, Java Spring, Java AWS. So there are some of the advanced topics which I will not be covering because the focus is in line with the Selenium automation. Okay, and if there are any issues, you can message me. I'll reply to your questions as soon as possible. Okay, I hope the session was useful. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for attending.